decided to have a suggestion like a tofu turkey or something.
Yeah, it's really horrific. Yeah. So here we are in the Ancient Medieval Lecture for Wednesday, 17th of February 2021. You all have your notes out, and we are ready to go. Where we left things last time is we were talking about the Synoptic Gospels, the three Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all focusing on the testimony of St. Peter, all focusing on the ministry in the north and the Galilee, and how they often told the same stories with different emphases. And there are unique things in each Gospel. Mark's the oldest. Matthew is about converting the Jews and explaining Jesus in terms of Jewish prophecy. And Luke is about explaining Jesus coming to the world as a healer. Since Luke himself was a doctor, he saw things in that way. And he also saw Jesus as a man who would come and really have concern for people who didn't count: women, children, and slaves. Jesus is shown in Luke again and again caring about these otherwise unimportant people. So now we're going to look at the fourth and last gospel, the Gospel of John, which is a different sort of thing entirely. The book of John's symbol is not the lion like Matthew, nor is it the man like Mark, nor is it the lamb like Luke. John's symbol is the eagle. Mira, where are you? And the eagle sees farther and flies higher than anyone else. So that's the symbolism there. Please pass that back to Julia. Thank you. John's gospel focuses on Jesus' ministry, thank you, around Jerusalem in Judea. Ms. Janae? John's Gospel, therefore, tells a number of different stories that you don't find anywhere else, Anna, in the Bible. Now, John himself was a young man who was present at the Last Supper. And he was a follower of, what's wrong? Okay. I didn't give that to the wrong person. John spends his life growing up in the church. He was so young when Jesus touched his life that he was only a Jewish in his early childhood. Ava. Now, when John wrote this, he wrote the last of the Gospels. This was written close to the year 100 AD, which is about 70 years after Jesus' crucifixion. And he's writing in a different world. Please pass this back to Ms. Daigle. Thank you. The others were writing before Nero's persecution set a tone for the Roman government looking with suspicion at the Christian faith. However, by the time of the Gospel of John, it is clear that the Roman government is, please pass this back to Ari, that the Roman government, please pass this back to Emma, is hostile to Christianity. Ms. Rougeau? And therefore, John is writing the story of Jesus to a Christian church that is under active persecution by the most powerful government in the world. This matters. It's going to shape what John says. He's also writing at a time when the Jews and the Christians have separated. Between the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke being written and the Gospel of John being written, the Jewish war with the Romans happens. The first Jewish war with the Romans happens in the late 60s and early 70s AD. And in this war, Jerusalem is destroyed, the temple is destroyed, and the Christians sat and did nothing. The Christians didn't help the Jewish people. The Christians didn't take up arms as other Jews did. The Christians, some of them were friendly to the Romans. So the Romans saw the Christians as distinct from the Jews. The Jews no longer saw Christianity as a subset of Judaism. Instead, they see it more and more as a weird variant of Judaism that has taken root in the Greek and Roman world. So, John is writing at a time when relations with the Jews are hostile and where relations with the Romans are also hostile. Another thing to bear in mind about the Gospel of John is that John is writing at a time when there are large groups of people that are challenging Christianity for new believers. And these are called Gnostics. You're going to want to write that down. Gnostics. 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 Now, what Gnostics and Gnosticism is about, there are Gnostics within Christianity, there are Gnostics within Judaism, there are Gnostics among the pagan cults of the Greek and Roman world and the Persian world. The heart of Gnosticism is what is called gnosis, Gnosis. And what gnosis is unity with God through meditation. Unity with God through meditation. So what you do is you learn secret styles of meditation that will allow your soul to leave your body, like astral travel, and travel into the world of spirit and start flying around God, like moths fly around flame around a summer campfire. And through proper gnosis, your spirit can join temporarily with the Spirit of God. As preparation for when you die, your soul, knowing where it's going to go, will go back to God. So Gnostics claim a secret knowledge that no one else has. They claim that they have the key to encountering God in this lifetime through meditation. And therefore, when they encounter God, they're going to get even more secrets that no one else knows. And by using these special techniques, everyone else is going to be left behind. Only the Gnostics will be saved. Have you ever heard of a pyramid scheme in business? You want to explain what that is?
So I think the best way to explain it is like where you have one person who's kind of like at the very top, and then they send out, I guess the way it's described is like with makeup, like giant makeup, like I guess collages.
Yeah.
You have like another two people who then go out and distribute it and try to get other people to distribute it.
Mm-hmm.
They get another two people, and it just keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger.
Boom, boom. Now, each of the people who get joined up have to pay the people above them. So what a pyramid scheme is, a giant confidence game designed to get gullible people to buy in with the belief that it will continue to grow almost infinitely. And that even though when they join, they're going to have to pay a lot of money to the people above them, eventually they'll have so many people below them that they'll get rich. Pyramid schemes always fail because sooner or later people stop buying what they're selling. And they collapse, and people suddenly realize it doesn't mean anything. That we have just spent time and money on nothing. If people suddenly wake up and think that about Bitcoin, which they will eventually, all the effort that people today are putting into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will just evaporate. Then again, You know what our money is today? It's not gold in a bank. It's information in a computer system, a hackable computer system. And if one day people wake up and realize that money is really just the belief that it has value, the economy of the world will collapse. And lots of people will die. Because when the economy of the world collapses, the ways we have of getting food and electrical power and having law and order, bye-bye, there they go. Gnosticism is like both of these things. It's like a pyramid scheme in that the people with the secret become like cult leaders. And everyone treats them like the hand of God. And if they want sex, they have sex. If they want money, they get money. If they want to live their own unique lifestyle, people are going to enable that because they're the hand of God. They're the person with the key to gnosis. So on the one hand, Gnosticism is a bit of a pyramid scheme. On the other hand, Gnosticism says that salvation is only for the smart. Salvation is only for the well-connected. If you're not smart enough or well-connected enough to learn Gnosis in your lifetime, your life really doesn't mean much. And your afterlife isn't going to really mean much either. Whether you're hanging around in Sheol or Hades or as a ghost, or whether you just wink out of existence, it doesn't matter. Because you didn't achieve Gnosis. There's a book that was famous about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, called the Da Vinci Code. Oh, the frickin' Da Vinci Code. And in the Da Vinci Code, the writer, Dan Brown, basically paints the entire Christian faith, particularly the Roman Catholic Church, as a giant Gnostic heresy. Whereby Leonardo da Vinci, in his painting of the Last Supper, is trying to tell the secrets that the church is keeping suppressed about Mary and the power of women in the Christian faith and all the secrets that the evil priests are keeping to control the world and be wealthy. Yeah. A, it's a mystery novel. B, it's fiction. C, it's a lie. The Christian faith may be accused of being many things, but it is not a Gnostic heresy. Christ at no point came to save those who had the secret knowledge. Christ at no point came to save those who were smart enough to figure out how to command their spirit to leave their body and achieve gnosis. Christ never came to say, if you're a part of our club, you might learn gnosis and be saved, but the rest of you are damned to hellfire. He never said any of that. The whole point of Christianity, a point that Luke focuses on, but that other Christians, including Jesus, focuses on, is that all human beings have value to God. Even stupid people, even ugly people, even obscure people, backwater people, backwoods people, retarded people, handicapped people, even women and children and slaves. Oh my! That everyone has value. And that notion that everyone has value means that anyone and everyone can be saved. You don't need a secret knowledge. You don't need to join a cult. You don't need to learn some jujitsu meditation technique. All you need is love and faith. But at the time John was writing, Gnostics were trying to hijack the Christian movement and turn Christianity into what the Da Vinci Code falsely claims that it was, which is a secret cult all about power and secrets and power and secrets. Power and secrets. Which it's not. So, a lot of the Gospel of John involves something that you don't see in the other Gospels. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus speaks and people listen. In John, Jesus speaks and people argue. People ask questions. People interrupt. like in a normal life. Normal life is not this classroom where I talk and you listen and you ask occasional questions politely by raising your hands. If we were all adults out in the world interacting, I'd say things that you might find objectionable or that you really want to agree with, and you'd interrupt me. And that would be part of the conversation, and I'd interrupt you. And that's the way it goes. The book of John has a lot of that. It's the only gospel where people frequently interrupt Jesus, question Jesus, disagree with Jesus, argue with Jesus, because that gives John a chance to have Jesus explain why Christianity is not a Gnostic cult, why Gnosticism is in fact wrong, and also why Christians are being persecuted by the Romans and disowned by the Jews. So John has all of this in his book. In the Gospel of John, unlike the other synoptic gospels, or unlike these synoptic gospels, there aren't that many miracles. There are very few. One of them is the making of wine for the wedding at Cana. For those who think that Christianity needs to be a teetotaling religion where nobody drinks alcohol, the Gospel of John's a bit of a problem because the first miracle Jesus does is there's a big wedding party. And the wedding runs out of wine. And so Jesus says, brings the water jugs. And when he looks at them and shows them to other people, the water jugs suddenly are filled with wine. So that people can drink wine at a wedding and celebrate. It's a nice sign. In John, miracles are never called miracles. Miracles imply magic intervention. They're called signs. Why? Because every one of these moments of magic are about showing what God is doing and what God is like. They are signs of the nature of God. They're not miracles deadly with magic. They're signs about what God is like. Even though the Gospel of John has the fewest of these, it has the greatest of them. Jesus has a friend who lives in Bethany near Jerusalem. His name is Lazarus. Lazarus happens to be wealthy. Now, unlike Matthew, he's not wealthy because he's a tax collector. He simply is wealthy. They exist, wealthy people. They do. That's not a problem. Whenever Jesus is in the area of Bethany, he spends his time sleeping in Lazarus' house. He uses Lazarus' home as a base. And Lazarus has two sisters, Mary and Martha. Well, this is an old friend of Jesus. This is somebody that he comes back to again and again over the years. He doesn't follow Jesus, but he always provides hospitality for him. This is kind of special. And then Jesus gets word. While he's on his way to do something very special, he gets a message from Mary and Martha saying, "Come, Lazarus is dying. We know he'd love to see you before he dies. Please, please don't hesitate. Please come right now." And Jesus thinks about it and he says, "No, we've got to do this other thing first. Then we'll go see your Lazarus." So when Jesus is walking towards Lazarus' home, he sees a crowd of people in the grounds and outside, and he realizes it's a funeral. Lazarus has passed. Jesus gave up any chance of seeing Lazarus alive when he chose to go on with his other mission. And when Mary and Martha hear about Jesus arriving, I think it's Martha, I could be wrong, one of them comes out and basically is crying at Jesus, and she's both furious and just bereaved, and she says, "If only you had come, if only you had been here, we know that it could have been all right. If only." And there's one of the few occasions in the Bible where Jesus wept. Actually, Jesus lets out a cry of anguish because Lazarus was his friend. Mary or Martha are like family to him. And basically there's the implicit message that had he done something different, Lazarus would be alive. But he weeps and he goes with them to the tomb. And then he does something that nobody expects. he says, open the tomb. Lazarus has been dead for days. The body smells. The body has begun to decompose. But Jesus says, open the tomb. And he has enough respect among the people at the funeral that they actually go through the effort of rolling the stone aside, which is not an easy thing to do. And they open the tomb. Jesus approaches the door, looks inside, and says, Lazarus, arise! Lazarus, arise! People hear a shuffling from inside the tomb. And they see Lazarus step out into the sunlight. He's covered in the shroud, which is what you bury somebody in Judea. He doesn't look healthy, exactly. But he's alive. That's called resurrection. Now you might ask, if Jesus could raise Lazarus from the dead, which Christians believe, you don't have to, Christians do, why wouldn't he raise everyone else around him? Why wouldn't he just end death at all? Think about how horrible the world would be if nobody died. Think about how crowded it would be. Think about how it would be to be in a family business and never inherit because your grandfather is still alive and your father's going to be still alive, and so you never get to be the head of the family business. Death is important. It's an important part of our existence. So why, if death is important as an important part of our existence, does Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead? There is a purpose, and the purpose has to do with the word sign. In the raising of Lazarus from the dead, in the resurrection of Lazarus from the dead, what is Jesus demonstrating about the power of God and the power of death? It is a simple, logical lesson that's being taught in one of the most miraculous ways that you can possibly imagine. What lesson? Gosh, I'm tempted to roll with this.
Oh, I thought this was like a...
No, it's not a rhetorical. It's a serious question. If you want to take a shot, be my guest.
Yeah, I was going to, but I thought it was
Go for it.
rhetorical. Okay. No, I think maybe it's because of the whole that Jesus rises from the dead story later on in the Bible is a sign of that.
It's a foreshadowing of that, yes. It is a foreshadowing of Jesus' own resurrection. That's part of it.
It also proves that God's power is greater than death.
Exactly. That's the heart of it. Death is something that, as much as we may be afraid of it, or just accept it as part of normal life, death exists. It'll come for us all. It's part of our existence. There's an inevitability of it. So there's a reason why people say, sort of anecdotally, the only things certain in life are death and taxes. Because if you're alive, you will die, and while you're alive, you will be taxed by the government, because that's what governments do. If God is more powerful than the inevitability of death, maybe God's power is real. Maybe it isn't just imaginary talk. Maybe it's a real God. Again, Christians believe it, others don't necessarily. Yes? Please. Can you say it louder? I can barely.
Comics and like some Marvel stuff.
Sure.
Okay, so in the Green Arrow, there's this thing called the Lazarus pit, and it basically puts a body in back to the dead.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes sense, though.
And I didn't realize that was a reference to the Bible.
Yeah, it is. DC and Marvel, one of the things I like about comics is that they retell old stories in new ways. The best comics, I think, do that. I'd have to admit my taste in comics goes back to the 1980s and The Dark Knight and Watchmen and other graphic novels like that. I'm not up so much on the more modern stuff because I'm old. But I do like graphic novels, especially well-written ones, and I like comics. It doesn't surprise me at all. That is the very idea of it. It has to do with resurrection. It has to do with the power of God versus the power of death. So, there's also an edge in the Gospel of John against the Jewish leaders. This is not so present in Luke or Mark, and it's not at all really present in Matthew. Now, there are arguments that Jesus has with certain Jewish leaders. There are two groups in particular that Jesus singles out for scorn. These are called Pharisees and Sadducees. And they're different. We'll start with the Pharisees. And he also had trouble with the temple priests. Okay, we start with the S. That's an S. The Pharisees. I was about to make a reference to Rome's Vestal Virgins. You may know about the Vestal Virgins from other things. The Vestal Virgins were a group of women in Rome, in pagan Rome, who would temporarily give up their lives and dedicate their life, their everyday life, to the service of Hestia or Vesta, goddess of the hearth. And the security and sanctity and virginity, at least, or celibacy of these women during their time as Vestals was one of the things that gave Rome security. It was a blessing from the gods, and as long as the Vestals were kept pure, Rome would be fine. Now, women came and went. They didn't necessarily stay a Vestal for the rest of their life, but they might do it for 5 years or 10 years as a service. In a manner similar to that, there were men of the Jewish faith who went on a special journey. But it's not a journey to another place. What they would do is they would adopt the Mishnah as their guiding principle. The Mishnah is the interpretive scribal law based on the Ten Commandments. It's all the interpretations. Now, in normal life, no one can follow every rule in the Mishnah. It's impossible. But what the Pharisees do is, to the greatest extent possible, they step away from regular life. They dress in special robes. And their entire purpose while being Pharisees, which again isn't their whole life, sometimes it's just a few years, is that they will obey every iota of the Mishnah, that they will obey every single term and tenet in the scribal law. And to do this, they have to be supported financially by wealthy people, which they are, and they have to not work, which they don't. And there's all sorts of things which the Pharisees are given because in living the law, they are a blessing to the people, a lot like the Vestal Virgins are to the pagan Romans. So that's one group, the Pharisees. They're living the law in a very conspicuous way, and everyone honors them. The Sadducees are Jews who have reconciled themselves to Roman rule, like Matthew, the tax collector before he was taken by Jesus. Sadducees don't believe in an afterlife. They think this is the only world. Sadducees believe that there is no conflict between the Jewish faith and Roman society. So Sadducees tend to make up the priesthood and the upper class of Jewish society in Roman Judea. The temple priests are a subset of Sadducees, and they are really their own faction. These are also known as the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin, or the temple priests, have a uniquely respected role in Jewish society at that time. They are the ones that conduct the blood right sacrifices. They're the ones that sacrifice the animals. They are the ones that keep the Holy of Holies, which contains whatever wreckage of the Ten Commandments there once was. It is the place that God himself comes and enters the world. It's a place where only the high priest of the Sanhedrin can go on the high holy day once a year. The priests are rooted in ritual. The Sadducees in compromise. The Pharisees are rooted in a conspicuous obeying of the law. Today is Ash Wednesday. If you're Roman Catholic or Greek Orthodox Christian, at some point during the day you'll go to church, and it's the beginning of what's called the season of Lent, which is the waiting for Easter, 40 days before Easter. During Lent, participants are supposed to sacrifice something from their lives. Maybe it is a certain kind of food. Maybe it's watching television or playing computer games or whatever. You give up something that you really like in your life as a sacrifice to God. And there are people, because I grew up Catholic, who always moan during Lent. Oh, I wish I could have beef, but I gave beef up for Lent. And they let everyone know how miserable their lives are because they're doing their religious duty. Not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to suffer in silence and with some dignity, but they don't. Jesus finds criticism for all these groups. He says, you Pharisees are a bunch of showboating egomaniacs. It's all about you and how hard your life is because you obey the law. The law isn't about fetishism. The law is about God and love and fidelity. You Pharisees, you Sadducees, you hypocrites. You Sadducees, you see life in terms of practical politics. You don't understand. Life is about love and faith. It's not about money and power. You're just as much of a hypocrite as the Pharisees are. And as to you temple priests, do you really think that faith is about sacrificing lambs and pigeons? It's about love and fidelity. So Jesus argued with all three of these groups, but he argued as one Jew to another. Jesus was very Jewish in these first three Gospels. But in John, because by this point the separation has occurred between Jews and Christians, again and again there's reference to the Jewish leaders. And in John there's also a terrible, terrible verse, which is used by anti-Semites since then to justify their hatred, their irrational hatred of the Jews. When Jesus is executed, when he is condemned to death, there's a moment where in John, Pilate is to have said, you realize, Jews, this isn't my doing, this is your doing. You and your descendants will bear responsibility for this crime to the end of days. And the Jews of the crowd who want Jesus crucified say, yes, we understand. Now, that doesn't appear anywhere else in any gospel. But the anti-Semites, particularly of Europe and the Christian world, they use that as a justification for beating Jews, putting them in ghettos, burning synagogues, pogroms, and ultimately the final solution to the Jewish question. Because Jews are seen by these anti-Semites as nothing but a group of Christ killers. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is not I don't believe that anything could be further from the truth. Yes, it's in Scripture, but it's in Scripture in a wider context, and I don't think that it is reasonable, wise, fair, or even Christian to judge an entire race of people on the basis of what a few people on a given day 2,000 years ago once said. I don't think it's a valid justification for anti-Semitism. I don't think there is a valid justification for an irrational hatred of the Jews or of anyone else for that. So those are the qualities of the Gospel of John. Where are we in terms of time? Okay, we can do part of this. So go to your notes, and in your notes you will see the page that starts with Jesus delivered to Pilate. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this and compare the Synoptic Gospels in the way that they deal with this. The story is this. Jesus has been arrested. The priests have identified Jesus as a blasphemer, but the priests can't kill him. They don't have the power to do that. So they want the Romans to. So Jesus is delivered to the Roman governor of Judea, the procurator general, Pontius Pilate. Can I ask for a volunteer to read the short section from Matthew? Zoe.
Okay. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to anything about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to.
And that's fine. Okay, I need somebody to read Mark. Sir.
As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes of the council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him.
True, yeah. And it goes on. Now, there's different wording there. Would you please, Mr. Nay, be kind enough to read the section from Luke to the best of your ability? I know there's a muffled line.
When day came, the assembly of the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, gathered together, and they brought him to the council. Then the assembly rose as a body and brought Jesus before.
Okay. So, in all cases, it's saying basically the same thing. But the Greek in each of these books says it slightly differently. In this section, I don't see many major changes. Let's go on. Would somebody please read the trial before Pilate from Matthew? Yes. Is that a hand?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Matthew 27:11 through 14. Now Jesus. Middle of the
Now
left.
Jesus stood up and asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "Say so." But when for the chief priests and elders, not
I must have. Sorry. Just go on. Many accusations.
many accusations they make against you. But then he gave him no answer, not even a single charge, so that the governor was greatly.
Okay. Thank you. In this scene, Pilate is asking Jesus, basically, what are you being charged with? Are you the king of the Jews? That's what they say. And Jesus' only answer is, you say I am, which is kind of annoying to Pilate. What about Mark? Somebody. Yes, please.
Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priests accused him of many things. Many charges they bring against you. Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed.
Yeah. So again, this is sort of weird. Somebody asks, "Are you king of the Jews?" And his answer is, "You say I am." That's also, again, very similar between those two. Now we'll see how different Luke is. Would somebody please read from Luke? Yes.
They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "You say so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no base for accusation against this man." But they were insistent and said, "He stirs up the people by teaching throughout all of Judea and Galilee."
Excellent. It's different. First of all, you see the specific accusations made by the hostile crowd about Jesus to Pilate. He's perverting people. This is, by the way, the same charge that was leveled against Socrates, that he was perverting the minds of the young, and that he is claiming to be the Messiah, which they're translating politically as King of the Jews. It's so much more than that. So even though Matthew, Mark, and Luke all come from the same tradition, I hope at least you appreciate the differences between Luke on the one hand and Matthew and Mark on the other. Thanks to everyone who has read so far. Now we have a more ambitious one. The sentence of death. It's a longer bit of reading. Would somebody be willing to read from Matthew? Whether you read before or not doesn't matter. Okay, Zoe, give it a try. Thank you.
Now at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus
Barabbas.
So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas, or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the
Pause. To be clear, that is Pilate's wife. Pilate's wife is to have had a prophetic dream that her husband should not get involved in this because he'll be damned throughout history as a bloodstained bad guy. Please go on.
I would just find where I went.
Yes. Okay. Now the chief
Now
priests.
the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask Barabbas to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See it to yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
And here I obviously stand corrected because Matthew talks about the acceptance of the crowd for responsibility for Jesus' death. Sorry about that. Okay, you have heard it once. Miss Daigle, you got your hand up? Yeah,
She's adjusting her hair.
I know. Can you read, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner to them, anyone for whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his customs. Then he answered them, "You want me to release for you the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas from them instead. Pilate spoke to them, "And what do you wish me to do with the man called King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Thank you. Okay. Similar, but not exactly the same. Now we have Luke. Who will read for Luke? Go ahead. Thank you.
Then they all shouted out together, "Away with this fellow police, Barabbas for us." This was a man who had been put in prison for an insurrection that had taken place in the city, and for murder. Pilate, wanting to release Jesus, addressed them again. But they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why, what evil has he done? I have found in him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and he handed Jesus over as king.
Thank you. So, we have seen, and the purpose of this is to see how the Synoptics deal with the same event differently.
What did you?
What have you done?
No. Oh, I know what I did. At college, at Bates College, in my early freshman year, was part of the film board, and what we used to do is run projectors and screen movies on campus. Well, when my wife and I met, we were screening Jesus Christ Superstar, which is a movie about Jesus as if he were a hippie. I actually think very well of the movie. I think it does a good job of capturing scripture in an unusual and interesting way. You'll see parts of it in a little while, not today, but in upcoming lessons. Well, there's a moment in the last reel at the end where Jesus is on the cross and he says, "It is finished." And it's the culmination of the entire scene. At that moment, the projector seized up and froze. And all you could see on the projected screen was the film bursting into flame. Okay. At that moment, there were people in that theater who wondered whether Jesus Christ Superstar was in fact devil-inspired, as some fundamentalist Christians had said, because wow, that was a dramatic moment. That was a bit less so. Okay, so what do we get from this? First of all, Barabbas is described insurrectionist. He's described as a murderer. He's described as a bandit. So his description is different. An insurrectionist is a rebel, like a zealot. A murderer could be anyone. Luke includes the charges that the crowd is making. Jesus is perverting the people, and he's sowing insurrection by claiming to be king of the Jews. Matthew has Pilate washing his hands, and this is an incredibly important image for you to understand. Pilate doesn't want to take responsibility for this. He doesn't want to be blamed for this. And so Pilate says to the crowd, look, you're threatening riot if you don't get what you want. I don't want to give you what you want because I don't see a reason to kill this man. But fine, my job is to keep the peace. So if you'll take responsibility, and he orders the wash basin to be over, I will wash my hands of this. So to this day, when you say you're going to wash your hands of something, what it means is you're trying to absolve yourself from responsibility. It's not always a good thing. It doesn't always work. Jesus predicts, I forget where this is, but he in the past, Jesus predicted that when he would be lifted up, the world would be drawn to him. And that's sort of a foreshadowing. It wasn't in what we read, it's in an earlier thing. It's sort of a foreshadowing of the cross bringing about the rise of the Christian faith. So that's where we're going to leave things today. We'll come back to the Gospel of John tomorrow, dealing with the same event. Now, because I have my AP students coming in today, all of you can go. Who had to stay last Thursday?
No one. You kicked us all out because we got the
Okay. Who got to stay the week before?
A days.
So it'll be B Day that'll stay tomorrow. Okay? So expect, if you're a B Day student, that you will stay tomorrow. Because A Day stayed on Tuesday anyway, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay. You at home. Thank you.